Hello, welcome to Anyone Can Draw. Good Omens with Tyro. That's me. Hi. Looking forward to sharing some simple drawing techniques with you today. They're based on two books, Cartooning, Philosophy and Practice by Brunetti, and Picture This by the incomparable Lynda. The only thing you need to do this workshop is some sort of pencil, some sort of pen or marker, and something to draw on. I like index cards. They're a lot less intimidating than a whole big blank piece of paper, and you can get about 200 of them for $1. So if it goes really terribly wrong, you just recycle. What I'm going to show you today is how to draw really almost anything using very, very simple lines and shapes. Honestly, if you can write the alphabet, you can draw. All letters and numbers are actually drawings. And these simple shapes, straight lines, curved lines, connecting lines, zigzags, loops, spirals, letter shapes like question marks, check marks, hockey sticks. All of these kinds of shapes can be combined together to make a really beautiful or interesting drawing. Now, sometimes the first time people come back to drawing, if it's been a while, or if you just want to draw something quick, we start out with this person. Stick figure. Hi, stick figure. And we all love stick figure, of course, but like Lynda says, the real problem with stick figure is that they can only do two things, really. They can offer a hug and they can stop traffic, but we can't really turn stick figure to the side very easily. And it's hard to make them do very much of anything. But by using slightly more interesting shapes, we can come up with a much more interesting figure. So instead of a single line for a body, I'll draw a blob. And instead of a single line for arms and legs, I'll draw double lines. And just that little difference makes something a lot more alive. And the best part is, this figure, if we want to turn them to move them in some other direction, they actually move through space. We can do the same thing with faces. Everyone these days is very familiar with an emoji, or even the more complex emojis. But it's a lot more fun to start with a more unusual shape. And just by using, say, some letter C's, nice big zeros, maybe a hockey stick, and a zigzag, well, now I have a much more interesting face with a lot more expression to it. Starting out with the features rather than the outline is another great trick. If I draw the eyes first, then I know how big the outline needs to be. I'll do an upside down question mark for a nose. Two little lines for a mouth, and now I can see that a great big letter U and then maybe some zigzags and a letter C with a number 5 inside. We'll finish this person off perfectly. I can use these same simple techniques to draw my favorite ineffable characters. A round face, curly hair for a Xerophale. Nice big eyes. Bow tie. Waistcoat and jacket. And with simple body shapes, it's really easy to make a little character having fun. Of course, he needs someone to have fun with. By taking a little bit more time and using our pencil first, we can make some beginning shapes and then erase or go over with pen as we need to. I'm going to start with a blue pencil. One of the problems with drawing with pencil first is that once you have an eraser, you sort of have an undo button, and it can be hard to stop pressing that. So I actually like to draw in pen as much as I can, but doing a little bit of sketching with pencil first can be helpful. Using a colored pencil means that you do less erasing, and it also means that your pencil lines kind of just look a little nicer if you decide not to erase them. So I'm going to start out just with an oval, and I'm going to draw a line halfway across it. That's my guideline for eyes. And I'm going to make a nice round, almost pear-shaped body underneath. A circle with a letter C on each side for a bow tie. A letter V underneath. Maybe a curving V. I'm going to use a lot of curving lines. And an upside down V at the bottom of the waistcoat. 2 long curves for lapels. And his body's almost done. For arms, I'm going to use one great big letter C and then a smaller letter C. And I'll just curve the other arm out this way in echoing it. For legs, I'm going to make triangles, but I'm going to make them, again, out of sort of curved lines. So curving triangles. And then I can add little ovals for feet. Now let's look at the face. Eyes will be right on the line. And I'd like to make the bottom half of the face actually a little bit bigger than the top half. That upside down question mark for a nose. And by making the bottom half of the face bigger, I have room for a really, really big smile. Now the hairline, of course, is where it gets really fun. I'll just put some brows in here to get me started. I like to do sort of 3 big poofs. So one big one in the middle, a small one on each side. And I usually only use one ear, so one ear over here, right next to the eyes. And on this side, I'll just add an extra poof of hair. But here, I'll use a curve, 2 puffs, and another curve. And then the hairline at the temple, for most men, is actually quite straight. I'll just bring it down like that. Now I think our angel could be holding a book. So I'll just drop that in there under his arm. And another hand. Those few lines, and now I'm ready to come in with my pen. I did make this shoulder a little high, so I'm going to lower it down, but I always like to start with the face. A good tip is to make the eyes looking off to the side. Upside down question mark nose. Upside down letter C's. Big curve. A little line underneath and a little line above. The ear is a letter C. And here I have my hair. Great big curve. Smaller curve. Smaller curve. And then swoop, boop, boop, swoop. With a straight line there. And then I have the other side of his face. Now I can just move down the body. Bow tie, it's a circle with 2 letter C's. Maybe I'll add a little tiny V on each one. Curving shapes for lapels, the straight line for the top of the waistcoat. Curving line for the arm, and another curve. I'll give him a little cuff. The hand can still just be a circle. And here's his book. Curving line for this hand, or this arm, and another hand. Here's the edge of his coat. Now I had made this line very round, but I think I'll curve the edges of his coat. Pants. And shoes. Now I like to give a Zerfall tartan pants. So I'll make stripes, but I'll use double lines. And then double lines going across. If I curve them a little, it helps to make him look a bit rounder. And maybe just a line or 2 across his shoes. And I think he's done. Maybe he needs a halo. Now, of course, he needs a friend. When I'm drawing Crowley, I start just about the same way, with an oval for the face. Now I'm going to bring in, underneath this halfway line, a narrower bottom half to the face. An actual neck this time. And I'm going to use much straighter lines. Straighter lines and shapes for good, interesting contrast. deeper V, 2 triangles for lapels. And right now I'm just going to do straight lines for the legs, but I'll show you a good trick in a minute. Pointy triangles for feet. For the arms, a rectangle for the one upper arm, and an overlapping triangle for the lower arm. A good tip if you don't know how to draw hands is just to tuck them in a pocket. Now, when it comes to hair, I like to do something a little bit similar, but the same way I'm using straighter lines, I'm going to use straighter lines for the hair. Let's put in his eyes first, though. There's a lot of interesting possibilities for doing Curly's eyes. Of course, sunglasses. But if you start with brows, put the sunglasses underneath them, you can get some really great expressions. Or just changing the shape of the sunglasses themselves. Then, of course, there's the snake eyes underneath. The trick can be having slot pupils that look in another direction can be pretty tricky. So something that can make it a little bit easier is to put a dot looking the direction you want to look, and then try to turn that into a line. I'll stick with sunglasses for now. Use a check mark for a nose, and a sort of hockey stick for a mouth. A couple more hockey sticks for eyes, eyebrows, that is. Now I'm going to use curving points for his hair rather than poofs. A big one in the middle, a smaller one here, a smaller one here, another bit on the side. The hairline is straight to the ear, and then rather than curving poofs, straight lines. And straight lines as well for the hands. Now I'm ready for the pen. Curve, and a curve, and a curve, and a little bit. Sometimes I make his chin more pointy, sometimes I make it more square. Just depends on how I'm drawing that day. 2 triangles for the lapels of his coat. Now, all of these straight lines are very straight, but of course, Curly is a snake. So if we take some of those, or even all of those straight lines, and redraw each of them as a very long, thin S, or a backwards S, we'll get something a little bit more interesting. So just by changing each line into a longer, thinner, sort of an S curve, Now with this hand, I can just draw sort of a diamond kind of a shape. And then if I just add a few lines, it'll look enough like a hand that he could have himself a glass of wine. And of course, the easy solution to not sure what to do with this hand. Now I gave Aziraphale some tartan pants. I don't know that I'm going to do snakeskin on here, although a good tip about snakeskin is people often think of scales as a bunch of bumps like this. This is more fish scales. If you want a snake scale look, it works a little better if you do a curved checkerboard. Get more of a snake scale effect that way. I could give him little snake scale shoes, I suppose. What I do sometimes do is a little tail to go with Aziraphale's halo. Adding in like little details like that just kind of make it more fun. Little tail, little touches, maybe a pocket. And there's our friends. Now, of course, you can use these same techniques to draw other characters. Certainly other characters from Good Omens, but not limited to that. I think it's really, really fun, especially with these, if you're just drawing really fast. Let's see, could I perhaps do Beelzebub, the big fly on their head? Of course, we need some flies around them. Or Gabriel with a nice heavy hair there. Nice big rectangular body. I was trying to draw his Hermes scarf there. I don't know if it works, but so just these little simple lines and shapes, I think you can draw just about anything. Better than a stick figure. I've used some of these similar techniques in my own drawings. Well, for lots of things, but specifically for some ineffable drawings. Last February, I did Valentine's drawings for each day of the month. I think it was Miel Petit's prompt list. So these are some of those simple lines. Here you can see almost the exact same kinds of character faces and bodies. Or here, these simple figures, simple faces. So I hope you have fun with this. And if you do any drawings using these techniques or following this workshop, whether they're Good Omens drawings or not, I would love to see them if you tag me, if you post them anywhere with Anyone Can Draw Good Omens or tag me, Tyrograph. Come and holler at me on Tumblr about Good Omens. I would really, really love to know what everybody's doing. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day.